Hello, everyone. This is your girl, Donna D, aka the Urban Mommy, and I am back with another podcast. Today, I have a very special guest by the name of Miss Sandy Stream, and she is going to be educating us on courage. We're going to be talking about courage, self love, the comfort zone. We have a great dialogue coming up, and I hope you all stick around to the end because I know you will be very pleased. Sandy, welcome.
Thank you, Stan. I really appreciate having the opportunity to speak to you and speak to the people that appreciate your show.
All right, thank you. All right, so the way we usually start up, we just basically introduce ourselves. So can you tell everyone who is Sandy and not Sandy the author, but who is Sandy the person?
I love how you asked that, right? Because I guess a big part of it is people are really attached to their titles, right? So
Yes.
officially, if we want to go title wise, yes, I'm a lawyer. I graduated from a very prestigious law school in Montreal, blah, 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 but that's really not who I consider myself. Over the past few years, after struggling internally in many ways during COVID, I really spent a lot of time in a deeper place of myself and reading and meditating and watching and crying and doing everything else in those moments. And now, I guess what came from that is really a different sense of self and also a feeling of it's not exactly a title, it's more my. I don't know. It doesn't really matter if you call them callings or passions or whatever else. It's what I am to do is to be a bit of an activist and do my part in the world in conveying what I feel would help the world.
Okay. I like that. Okay, so you are a lawyer. You did go to law school, and I think I saw you practice law for almost 20 years. You
Yeah, I
taught
was
law.
teaching. Yeah, I was teaching business people actually. So,
Okay.
yeah,
That's
yeah.
very important. Okay, so in all of that, when you found your higher calling, you started talking about self care, and a lot of times we talk about self care, self love, and people unnecessarily say that it can be selfish. So, what are your thoughts on self love and having it not be selfish?
Yeah, I mean, for me, there's probably about like, I don't know, 40, 50 different topics to really trying to, really understand deeply in order to feel well in our world and to function as, as a healthy player in our world. And one of them only is this aspect of taking care of yourself. And yes, unfortunately, many of us are brought up with the idea that self love is selfish. If you think about that just for a moment, how could loving yourself be selfish? It really doesn't make sense, right? So a lot of us have been taught the opposite. So if you try to do something that's good for you, you get accused or put down or challenged or how could you, this party is important for me and blah, blah, blah. And you're trying to take care of yourself and then getting filled with guilt for taking care of yourself. So for me, it's obviously not selfish. In fact, I would, turn it around completely and say it's absolutely your responsibility as an adult to take care of yourself. And if you're not, it's actually irresponsible in terms of being a healthy adult.
Okay.
Yeah.
So, what exactly is self love? I know it's kind of self explanatory,
Yeah.
but it isn't as easy as people think. So, it's not just, I mean, it is just self love, but can you explain and maybe give some examples? Because people think just going to the spa is self love. I mean, it could be self care, but they think that that's all it takes. It's more than that.
Well, for me, the deepest, I guess, two most important elements for me of when I think about loving myself is realizing your own challenges and being kind to yourself. So, being kind to yourself, it's a big challenge for most people, actually. I think they're not truly kind to themselves. They like to think of themselves as kind people, but if you ask them, are you kind to yourself? It's probably not. So, being really, really understanding of yourself, it's a very difficult thing, I think, for most people to do. Meaning, if you mess up, are you able to understand why you messed up and why that might have happened, and to be caring or forgiving or understanding to yourself? If you are going through a hard time, are you able to comfort yourself instead of criticizing yourself? If you are needing space? Are you able to, respect that in yourself and need some space and assert that or express boundaries or everything else? So there's many facets of it, but ultimately, I guess it means really seeing your deeper self and taking care of it like a mama bear, I suppose. So all the facets that would be related to that. And when we do that, I actually think it helps the world. So it's not only not selfish, but you end up helping the world as a byproduct of this because you end up feeling well yourself. And when you feel well, you do things from a healthier place than when you're not feeling well internally, right? So what happens on the inside happens on the outside is a comment that many people like to say. So I would say the first thing before you worry about helping the world or doing anything for anyone or solving anything or changing anything would be really to look inward and take care of yourself, help yourself, love yourself. And then if your cup becomes so full, then, probably it will spill over into the world after that naturally.
Right. Okay, can we talk about parents? A lot of times, parents, as kids, we kind of put our kids first, and so much so that we neglect ourselves, loving ourselves, taking care of ourselves because
Yeah.
our kids are so much. Any thoughts on that?
Yeah, I mean, there's a few reasons. I have a 23-year-old and a 15-year-old, and I've made my share of mistakes and learned my share of lessons. So I can speak only to my experience, but there's many reasons that I think we do that. But sometimes, it's just a circumstance, and we do need to put a lot of energy because there's a lot of need. So there's no criticism there, or maybe it just is what it is at that time. But other times, there's a few things that I think that can happen. If we have not learned to love ourselves deeply and unconditionally and see ourselves, the word self-worth is used a lot. It's like used lightly, but I would use it as a deeper level, like just really true yourself, see yourself as a human being that's kind of equal to anyone else, as a spirit or soul or whatever you want to call it. So if you haven't um, arrived at that feeling for whatever reason, then a lot of times parents will try to get their self esteem from their children. So if their
Mm,
children achieve this or that, or if their children do well in this or that, that makes them a better person or better parent. And if they
mm,
don't, then even worse, that means I'm a bad parent or a bad person or whatever else. So they really attach their own self esteem or self worth to what happens with their children. So that could make us do a lot of strange things, I guess, with their children. Another thing that I think I've learned, and it doesn't mean I'm preaching as if I'm a know it all. Anything I've learned is because I was probably doing the opposite. But another thing that's super important is, a lot of us didn't learn to trust ourselves when we were kids or adults, even, and we weren't given that trust. We have everyone telling us what to do all the time. You should do this, you should do this, why don't you do this, why don't you do that, blah, blah, blah. This is how we were often raised. And so we don't develop this deep trust of ourselves that we kind of know which way we should move in our life, or, we have a feeling about how to go. We don't have practice doing that, and then we can likely transmit that also to our kids. So we micromanage, control our kids completely, thinking we know exactly what's good for them or how should it go. So that takes a ton of energy. So let alone the aspect of not using energy to take care of yourself, you can actually be wasting a lot of energy, actually not even being helpful to your kids by doing, for example, these two. I could probably think of other things, but I think these
right.
two are the first two
Great
that come to my
example.
mind. Yeah.
Yes.
Mm.
Okay. So, you also talk about demonizing emotions.
Mm. Yeah, so that's a very big one. So first, again, always with ourself first before we're thinking about other people.
Mm-hmm.
We often, when we have an emotion, we think something is wrong with us or we're not supposed to have it. If I feel sad, I shouldn't feel sad. I feel angry. Oh, I shouldn't feel angry or whatever. But actually, our emotions are very natural. They're very healthy, and they are our guidance system. So opposite than what many people are taught. They actually guide you to how you should move in the world. So if you're angry, maybe, I mean, it could be other things. Maybe underneath the anger, there could be hurt, or It could be very controlling behavior. So that aside, if it's not just to control other people that are not doing what you want them to do, but if we're angry, often it's actually a sign that our boundaries have been broken. So instead of saying like, oh, I shouldn't be angry, maybe it's like, why am I angry? Maybe I feel disrespected, or maybe I feel something that I need to think about, or and understand in myself and express or assert. So we're not equating anger with aggression. They're not the same thing. Anger is a feeling, aggressive behavior is something else, but there's absolutely nothing wrong with feeling anger. I mean, that's what the body
Right.
is feeling, and to look at that. And we demonize that. We often demonize that in our kids as well. Like, you shouldn't feel this, you shouldn't feel that. And it's very unhealthy. It makes them, I think it's one of the main reasons that many people walk around feeling something is wrong with them, because we're constantly given the feedback that something's wrong with you. What you're feeling is wrong. What you're feeling is wrong. What you're feeling is wrong. So, of course, you start thinking, okay, well, maybe something is wrong with me. I'm feeling all these things. So, I think learning to understand and validate emotions, again, not aggression, has nothing to do with throwing things or anything like that, but just what somebody feels and understanding it. I think that goes a long way to learning to understand yourself and navigate yourself in the world, um, and feel at peace with yourself in the world, because you know yourself to understand yourself better.
Right. I
Yeah.
had a guest on a podcast a couple of days ago, and she was talking about how, as a kid, well, not even as a kid, as she became older, they
Mm.
mislabeled her. They gave her medication and everything for being bipolar.
Yeah.
And after speaking with, with another doctor, she later found out that she was not bipolar.
Oh my
It was
goodness.
just,
Wow.
everybody has emotions. You're happy, you're sad. That's natural. People think just because they're sad that they're depressed. That's just because you're sad, it doesn't necessarily mean you're depressed. Sometimes
Yeah.
we have sad days. We're human, so it's okay
Yeah.
to be that way.
Sure, and maybe also, maybe a lot of people are very lonely, right? That it's a natural thing to be sad if you're lonely and you're not, opening and talking with many people. And I think these days there is such a lack of connection, like true connection, not superficial, unfulfilling connection, but true connection where people can be open and honest and connect. It's a very rare thing. So in Montreal, I facilitate, I call them courage circles in person. Once a week we meet, and we have an environment where people can actually be open, and we discuss different topics every single week, and we can discuss them openly and honestly. And when you have that kind of environment where everybody's not trying to advise each other, fix each other, dismiss each other's feelings, all that stuff that seems to be, I don't know how it's the norm in the society, because I know what definitely feels normal to me now is what's happening in that circle. That feels very normal.
Hmm.
And in that environment, people feel connected, and
Yeah.
we don't really have that much, right? And it's hard if you're dealing with someone, as soon as you say something, they're like, oh, but you should do that. Well, you're not connecting, you're not giving
Right.
space for them to exist and to express and to process. You're just trying to tell them what to do in their life. So
I,
it's maybe a skill to learn. I don't know how.
yeah. I think that's a lot. Social media kind of it puts that out there because we put out our comment or whatever it is that we have to say, and then 5 seconds later, here's someone with a that had that story, or they have a better idea, or they have some type of judgment for you. And I
Yeah.
think that we've become so accustomed to that, even with the poor celebrities. Anything that happens in their lives, we're jumping down their necks.
Yeah.
Um, and it's true. We need to get back to the point where we can just talk. So many people are
Yeah.
not able to talk because they are afraid of what others are going to say.
Yeah, and I don't blame them, right? Because people are, if they're very critical, it's very hard to deal with as a human being. So, got to try to find the few people around you that maybe are not so critical. But the main thing, I think, again, it always starts with yourself,
Yeah.
learning to not be self critical. And then eventually that will expand around you, because you will set boundaries on that behavior, right? But you're not going to set boundaries if you're doing it yourself. So you learn to be kind to yourself. And then somebody else is saying, like, you know, you shouldn't be making those stupid mistakes. You'd be like, hey, don't talk to me that way, please. Or, you'll set boundaries there and maybe change dealing with other people, or maybe modify this relationship. So it really starts with us, and then I think it expands outside ourselves once it's like cleaned up in there.
Right. So, how important is boundary setting?
I think it's actually one of the top things to learn to do. It's a very hard thing. It's actually, I think it's the hardest thing maybe to do in terms of like your personal growth or whatever else, to set boundaries, because if in your families this was not done or it was not accepted, so all of a sudden if you say no to something, first of all, it feels like you're different than the family or than the whatever. You're like not going with the group. That's a very frightening feeling internally if you're not used to it. Maybe after you've done it 10, 20, 50 times, you feel like, of course, I'm allowed to do this. But starting to do it is extremely scary. And yes, some people react very badly to it, right? So if I say, no, I really don't want to hear about this anymore today. It's too much for me. How could you? They take it all personally. They think it's about them, where actually you're
Mm-hmm.
expressing your limits.
Mm-hmm.
So you have to deal with that and still hold your ground. Very difficult to do
Mm-hmm.
that. But ultimately, for me, boundaries are not about like putting rules or, imposing things on other people. It's really learning to define yourself. What it is an expansion or defining of yourself. Because if you feel, for example, I'm too tired to go out today or whatever it is, and you respect that limit, that will lead you in the right direction and the right
Mm-hmm.
direction and the right direction and the right direction to become more and more yourself. So boundaries are really the path to becoming you at a deeper level instead of being who others think you're supposed to be or what
Yes.
others are telling you. But you probably have experienced or done a lot of that yourself, I imagine, if you're doing a podcast. So that must have been on your path, I imagine, Donna.
Yes. And as you're talking, I'm just sitting here thinking, and I don't want to say I was raised to be a pleaser. I don't want to say that, but I think I have always been a people pleaser, and
Yeah.
it literally pains me to say no to somebody. And of course, some people take advantage of it, but it is so tough for me to say no. I was just thinking about even with work, the last couple of months, I have been going through so much, and I
Mm-hmm.
have like a great connection with the people I work with, and like
Mm-hmm.
the clients that I work with.
Mm-hmm.
None of them had a clue what was going on in my life so much, and I just had to put a mask on and just continue to do it because I couldn't say no, but I wanted to say no. I needed to say no, but I
Mm.
didn't.
And do
I
you know
needed to
why?
no.
Yeah. I understand. I mean, I don't know your whole story or anything, but I can relate in terms of, when I was younger, and it's not about blaming. It doesn't really matter at this point where or why that came from, but I definitely felt like, being the good one or the nice one, and you're
Mhm.
and pleasing, like you really get that becomes like your role or how you get attention, or that's what makes you good, right?
Yeah.
Like you're the good girl or whatever, right? And so to move away from that, there's like this reflex of like, am I not good if I don't, something again,
Right.
back to this feeling of like, I'm not good or whatever. And so what, happened with me in this process of a few years is really when you get in touch with yourself so deeply and realize I'm good, period. Like it's not even good enough because good enough sounds like, okay, I'm
Right.
80%, I'm not 100%. No, no, no. Like,
Right.
so if you think of yourself in these months going through it, you're going like, I'm a good person. I'm just going through all this stuff or whatever else. And so when you start to develop this deeper feeling of goodness inside, no matter what's going on, and no longer feel like you must perform or do something or be nice in order to get the feeling. So in fact, if you think about it, if I'm only nice in order to get the feeling that I'm good, is that really nice, right? That's not, I'm not kind of getting a piece of something from doing that, right?
Hmm.
And so instead, a different idea than trying to get this literally almost like an addiction of getting like some nice points or something from doing nice
Hmm.
actions. Another approach completely is to sit on the floor and see if you can feel your goodness without doing absolutely nothing for anybody in any way in this world. And am I still good even if I'm doing nothing? And so
Right.
if you arrive at that feeling that your goodness is not dependent on doing these, whatever they are, almost addictive behaviors, I would say,
Yeah.
then whatever you're doing is coming because you feel like it's not to try to get some weird points. You already feel that, and then you're just going about life doing what you feel you need to do, or what calls you to do it, but you're not like doing it from the same need. So I think the practice would be to just sit and do nothing and see if you can handle that and not do
And I
anything for anyone. Yeah.
and I think, as I'm listening, I don't
Mm,
necessarily think I do it, but I think I do it because I think that's me. I have grown
mm,
into this role,
mm.
and it has become me so much that I don't even know who me is because I just
Exactly.
think that that's all I'm supposed to do because I'm just
Right.
as we're talking, I'm like literally having a moment.
Yeah.
I'm thinking because like my car was stolen,
Oh,
so I couldn't get to places,
yeah.
and I would still catch an Uber to go do stuff for other people, and I didn't even have a car.
Well, when you say that, who am I if I'm not running around doing all these things for other people? My quick feeling, if it's okay to tell you, is you are being led by your boundaries. So who you are, like I said, we become us when we don't know who am I? Like I'm kind of lost. Boundaries is what guide us because you said like I knew I shouldn't do that. Like I was supposed to say no. That's you.
Yeah,
That's you. And if you constantly respect that no, that inner no that says no, which if you think about it, it's not really saying no to other people. It's actually saying yes to you, right? So if you
yeah,
continue to say yes to you, no, I need to take care of myself. I cannot drive these things or whatever. The more we say yes to ourselves, we start to feel ourselves more, right? Because
right,
the boundaries are actually like defining ourselves. So
right.
listening to that internal no, or like I like to call it, it's a yes to you. It may be a no to others, but it's a yes to you. It makes us get to know ourselves better, one boundary at a time,
That's
basically.
true.
So,
And I'm
yeah.
thinking maybe
Hmm.
I'm saying we, but maybe I do it because I think I don't say make someone like you or something.
Yes. Yeah. And, that's another interesting one. We did a circle on that one once. So we talk, like I said, every week we do different circles. And for me, at least, where I arrive with that, and it's all new. Like I didn't always think this way. I just share where I'm at, right? People take what they like and they share with each other what they like. But for me, what I arrived with that was to realize, like, do I really want to, and again, people use that word power, give your power away. They use it like loosely, but just really think about it practically speaking. So let's say you're in
Hmm.
the room, Donna. Would I like to give Donna, you will now be the person in this world from now on, okay, for the next 10 years, you are going to decide if I am nice. You're going to decide if I'm good. You are going to decide if you approve of me or not. You're going to decide what I should do in the world, if I should feel guilty, if I do this, if I should feel that. Like you get to decide all that from now on. So what is that, right? That is giving my power from me to you, basically, right? So when we
Hmm.
learn to like take that back, meaning like, no, I am going to decide my goodness, my choices, where what I should do or not do, and whatever, and not put it in the external world, and trust myself deeper and go with that. And then if somebody likes me or not, well, that's not really my business. It's not in my control, and it's not my business either. My business is to follow myself, and what happens, happens.
Right,
It's a hard thing to do, right? Like it took a lot of time and courage to feel this way, but this is how I feel at peace. So that's why I share this, because this is how I feel like I'm at ease, right? Because I'm just following. It's like you're going with the water and decide, following what I feel I should do. You know what I
right.
mean? Yeah.
Okay,
Does that
so
make sense? What do you
it
think?
does. It does. It makes a lot of sense. I guess I have a lot of thinking to do because it's just like I don't want to say you have to reinvent yourself, but I literally have to find myself because for so long
Yeah.
myself was in actions.
Yes. Yeah. And a
Acts,
lot
like I
of
say,
people are
acts
in
and
that.
service.
Yeah. Everybody seems to be falling in that trap from what I'm seeing, and myself included. You're this, you succeeded in this, you did this, whatever, you achieved in this and that. And that's why one of the first things we do in the circle, actually, I ask everyone to introduce themselves. And then I
Mm-hmm.
say, okay, what we're going to do, for this hour that we're sitting together is we're going to drop all those things. So I'm the first, I drop my title, right? And I have like a prestigious one. So it sets an example of, can we drop our titles and our work and actually our kids and our pets for this hour and
Mm-hmm.
just talk to each other as human beings? So it's a different way to relate when you relate from a deeper level than your credentials, your diplomas, your whatever. I'm not saying that it's not cool to do all those things, but deeper, that's not who we are. Our deeper essence.
Okay.
Mm.
So, talking about comfort zone, why does the comfort zone seem so uncomfortable?
Yeah. That one I like to think about. So a lot of people would talk about getting out of the comfort zone as if your current zone is comfortable, but actually, maybe it's not comfortable at all. Maybe it's
Mm-hmm.
actually miserable. So
Mm-hmm.
what's the other zone is not just uncomfortable. Like, so what, if you call this a comfort zone, that's the uncomfortable zone. I would say it's almost the opposite. This one might be very, very uncomfortable. And
Mm-hmm.
the other one is just unknown, and people are not comfortable with what we don't know, because they're used to, planning and predicting everything, and we cannot. And so it's scary. And so I guess maybe that's where trust comes in a little bit, and to just be able to do things without knowing and just realize there's a million possibilities that can happen, and what will happen will happen. I'll just do what feels right and see what happens. Well, let's see what happens. And that's
Right.
hard for people to do. They want to control the future, which is not possible.
No.
And so they get stuck in this kind of control mode
Mm-hmm.
instead of making a choice, letting go, see what happens, make another choice, let go, see what happens, because we cannot, control the millions of things that are going to move around. I cannot control what you're going to say in the next 2 seconds. You,
Right.
me, right? So
Right.
we have to just kind of go with it. Yeah.
Were you always like this, or did this come after COVID?
Oh no, this is all new. I was completely, I don't want to say another person, it's just we learn different things from different moments in our life. And I think the level of suffering that I was feeling
Mm.
was so deep, and so difficult that I guess I was really seeking desperately to help myself. And
Mm.
so I just spent a lot of time reading, listening, meditating, like whatever, everything, and just taking notes. And maybe my kind of lawyerly skills did, help me in terms of organizing. So I would like literally have pages all around, like organizing, like, oh, this person just said something really interesting about people pleasing. Okay, I'm gonna write it down. That was like me, people pleasing section, then this section, and I had like huge number of sections because it took many pieces for me to start feeling like, okay, like, how do I live? I don't even know how do I function here in this world,
Right.
like feeling okay. And it was many pieces. It's not like, okay, meditate 10 minutes a day, you're going to feel good. Wasn't like
Right.
that. Yeah.
Right. And I'm like I said, I'm learning a lot. Just this conversation. So I really do appreciate it because this conversation is actually more for me at this point because I feel like
Oh,
thank you. I just
nice.
feel like
Sure.
I'm learning a lot from your conversation. Just thinking like I was always kind of more like an overachiever as well. I would always want to do this and do this and do this and do this. I
Yeah.
guess now that I'm looking at it, I have always been looking for validation because I would do something. All right, I got a degree. Okay, I think I need another one. Okay,
I
now,
know. I hear
now I have
you.
a master's degree. Now I have a
Mm.
master's degree. All I think I want to do is it never stops.
Yeah. No, it never stops. And we're looking for other people to approve us or love us or recognize us, and we weren't really taught that we could. I mean, ideally, it's nice to get it from parents, but we weren't really taught that we can offer that to ourselves completely. And in fact, when it comes to unconditional love, I my view, it doesn't mean people have to agree. My view is it's actually extremely rare, to see in full action, whether even parent to child, like really unconditional. but it's absolutely possible to give it to yourself. And
Mm,
so it's a wonderful thing to be able to care and love yourself, like no matter what you do, no matter what's happening, no matter what's going on, which is what so many of us really would love to have, but it's possible to have
right.
internally. Yeah.
Okay. So that actually
Yeah.
goes perfect to the next topic, which is love from the inside.
Yeah. So I guess that's what it is, right? So we are able to do that. And I think we're actually best suited to do that for ourselves because it really is hard for anyone else to know us as well as we know ourselves, right? Like, so even if you probably spent some time talking to me about these past few months about the car stolen and all the difficulties, I can understand it. It would maybe help, to have another human being, understand and connect and validate, who's truly understand. But ultimately, you're really the only one who knows, like, everything, not just this month and the whole year and your 5 years and your 20 years and like all this stuff. Like, you really, really know what's happened. And
Right.
so, if you can be compassionate to yourself for that, this feeling of compassion for self is so medicinal. It's
Mm,
like our ultimate medicine, I would say, to offer ourselves understanding, kind understanding of our own, experiences, that we're the only ones who really know it to the level of detail that anyone else. It's a very healing thing to do for yourself. And once you've done it to yourself consistently, regularly, to the point where you feel at ease and you process all your pain and everything else, then it just becomes natural. You will see that for others, right? Because you've seen your own. So you can
mhm.
understand other people because you understand yourself, right? So it
Right.
always starts with us. Always starts with us.
It does.
Yeah.
Forgiveness is always a huge topic in so many different avenues. We always talk about forgiveness, but
Mm.
very rarely do we ever talk about self forgiveness. We forgive
Yeah.
everyone,
Yeah.
but
Well, in our circles, we start with that,
that's
obviously.
good.
We don't worry about forgiving other people.
That's
You
good.
really need to start with forgiving yourself. And it's a tough one. I notice the more someone is raised with perfectionist mentality, the harder it is to do forgiveness.
Yeah.
And that's because it's almost like, again, like, yeah, you're talking about this achieving thing, right? It's almost as if there's some kind of point system and I'm like doing points to get to perfect or something, right?
Mm-hmm.
Versus, no, I'm good inside and I'm just kind of navigating life and doing whatever, making mistakes, making not mistakes, but it doesn't affect this internal feeling, right? So if
Mm-hmm.
you've been raised or you've adopted this mentality, it's just very hard to make mistakes and to let yourself and forgive yourself because you get diminished. Oh, shoot, like I have to admit I'm a loser or something. Do you know what I mean? So it's very hard and to let it go. Whereas the other way, you're like, well, I'm a human being. Well, I made mistakes. I'm learning. Okay. And I forgive myself. That's what I knew at the time. That's what I knew. So what else was I supposed to do? And do you see what I mean? It doesn't take away from the inner definition of yourself as a good person because you messed up. You just learn,
It's messed up.
So yeah. Well,
This,
whatever. You made a mistake. Oh, I've made my share.
right.
Like huge. Yeah.
Right, right. I'm thinking, let me see, my daughter is 10. So about
Mm,
10, probably 10 years ago, my ex and I, we were breaking up, of course, and he texts me and he's like, all right, well, whatever. He called me Miss Perfect. And I was like,
mm,
and I was so mad and that bothered me for years. I literally took a
mm.
screenshot of that little text and I
Yeah.
just kept it. I was like, why does he say that? I'm not like that. I don't act like that. But
Mm.
today, I just realized that I think that maybe he saw something in me that I didn't see in myself, and now I see that I think I don't say it, I don't proclaim to be perfect or anything like that, but I do think, just like you said, I have some kind of
Striving to be perfect.
yeah,
Yeah.
I have
That's
this point system.
perfectionism. Sure.
I have a
Yeah.
point system, and I do,
Yeah.
and like I literally just just accepted that.
Yeah. Well, we can, like everything, look at ourselves with compassion, right? And you can say, oh, shoot, like, and that's why in the group, what we try to do is just look at the truth. We're not trying to look what's nice, not nice, the ideal, comfortable, not comfortable. What's the truth? And the truth in this question would be, am I doing for you? Am I doing, am I taking on this perfectionism concept, and why have I taken this on? Where did it come from? Is it happening? Is it healthy for me? Is it good to do or not? Without being critical, just to see the truth of it. What is this about? Like maybe getting curious. Where does it come from to have this, perfectionism or non-perfect? What is it? Read about, you know what I mean? So
Right.
that's a kind way to look at things, instead of like, oh shit, I shouldn't be doing this. This is wrong. What is it? Why did I adopt that? Um, did I need to do that for some reason? Did I have pain that I was dealing with that I ended up doing? You know what I mean? So that's
Right.
the kind way to learn. And so
Mhm.
if you're seeing this, then if you're curious, you'll learn about it and you learn about yourself, and then see where it takes you, you know?
Right. I need to come to
Yeah.
Montreal. I need to come join the courage
Sure.
circle.
Welcome.
I
Welcome.
need to go to it took me 37,
I'm
38 years to
52.
figure
Yeah,
out.
no criticism. Who can, when we're ready, we're ready, or when it's time, it's time. There's no points about that either, right?
That's true.
Yeah.
I gotta stop being so tough on myself, I guess.
Maybe sounds like it a little bit, right? If you have these strong expectations of what you're
Yeah.
supposed to do and achieve, even in self growth, right? We can end up with perfectionism of self. I have to achieve this level of personal growth or
Yeah.
something. So it's still part of the same
It's
mind, right?
true.
Yeah, instead of just, looking in the heart. And I think, it might be for you, Dawn. I don't know, but I think I've noticed like a lot of times it's very hard, especially if you're actually very intelligent head wise, right? If
Mm-hmm.
you are very good analytically and whatever, and you do achieve a lot because you're very good, right? At math, this, that, law, whatever else, and you get a lot of credit for that, it's actually maybe even, I wonder, it's a theory, it's actually even harder to not, make that you, and for you to be your heart space and your inner whatever else, because you've gotten all this, like, whether it's credit or whatever validation for those things. And so it might be
Mm-hmm.
even harder to drop into a deeper part of ourselves and not make that, the deep self. It doesn't mean we don't use that, right? But if you
Right.
find yourself deeper, then you're using that as a tool, like a calculator. I like to call the head as a calculator. I have a super calculator here, but
Mm-hmm.
I'm not a calculator. I'm the heart, and then the heart will guide us to do certain things, and we'll use a calculator, maybe how to carry it out. But the boss is deeper inside. You know what I mean? Yeah.
Okay. So in your book, you talk about climate change, but we're not
Yeah.
talking about the regular climate change. So what is climate change as you speak about in your book?
Well, the kind of climate change I think that we need is a kind of a little bit what I'm feeling here, Don. I'm actually really enjoying our energy here for whatever reason, is because I guess because of your energy right now, this climate, what we're just me and you in this moment, is a very open climate, meaning people can share. They can be honest. They can learn. They can look at things. Am I being perfectionist? Am I not? Am I doing that? Whatever. And when you have this kind of climate as human beings together, and not doing dismissive behavior, critical behavior, and all those things that are so unhealthy, this kind of climate allows people to open, to have connection, to grow, to learn, all the good things in the world. So I think that, the way we deal with each other, that's the climate we really need to look at, how people interact together, and start setting boundaries of who we interact with and how we interact. And eventually it'll hopefully be contagious. And then that's what I think will indirectly impact all the other problems, that come from these internal sources. I think this is the actual issue of
Right.
most things, right?
Very true. Okay. So can you talk a little bit about your book that you do have? Can you tell us about it and also let people know how they can purchase it?
Well, my book is like a little manual that I wrote for myself, basically. It was like my little compilation of how do I run my life. So there's just little sections on many things. Some of the ones we talked about, a page on boundaries, a page on people pleasing, a
Mm-hmm.
page on this, a page on, like, just so there's like many pieces to a puzzle. And
Mm,
this is my puzzle. It doesn't mean it's other people's puzzle, but I have a feeling there's overlap, right? Because we're all
right.
human beings. So
Yes.
it's called the Courage Circle. And I guess it's on Amazon and everywhere else, whatever. It's called the Courage Circle: How to Live in Truth and Dare. And my website is thecouragecircle.com. And what there is there is the link, I guess, to my book and also to those circles that I facilitate.
Is it's in person or are the circles online?
So we do in person every Sunday, and recently I started online. They're free. Usually about 10, 15 people join every week online. So, Donna, if you're interested, welcome to join our
Yeah,
Guinness.
I
Yeah.
definitely need to. So is that on like Facebook or just go to
It's
couragecircle.com?
on Meetup. Yeah, if you go on thecouragecircle.com, it's a meetup group, and there's, you just RSVP and whatever, and you join, and
Okay,
we just discuss different topics.
that's nice. You have a
Yeah, it's
very
fun.
soothing voice as well.
Oh, thanks.
I'm like,
Ah. Maybe I should do bedtime stories instead.
yes. I'm like, this is so interesting because I'm listening, like, but then your voice is like, I want to
Ugh.
just, but it's so relaxing, it's good. But I think that helps because it helps. I'm being vulnerable. It helps me to relax and be comfortable and telling, trusting, have a trusting
Yeah.
voice. So I'm like,
Oh, thanks.
you
Well,
know,
actually, in our circle, I think everybody kind of starts to have this kind of feeling, right? And it's not, I don't know if it's necessarily my voice, but I guess people feel in the room even. So it's not just me. I
hmm
assure you it's not. But if you start to sit in the room and nobody's jumping on the other person, right? Like, even if you tell me, okay, I'm thinking there's like perfect, I'm not like, you should really call this doctor. That this stuff is really whatever. Read this book. This one wrote down the,
hmm
it's forceful. And
hmm
if you kind of back off and let everyone do their own work,
yeah.
you can say things, but it's their life and not be controlling or critical. That's really the only thing that's like, and everybody does that now in the circle. It's like, this is the way we are together. It feels very, very healthy.
Okay.
Yeah. Yeah. It's rare, unfortunately, but who knows, maybe.
It happens. All right. So I also have a question that I like to ask. So if you could go back in time and talk to 17-year-old Sandy, what
Yeah.
would you tell her?
The one thing I wasn't hearing back then, which I wish I heard, was trust yourself. Trust yourself. Like, even if nobody ever has before and nobody does around you, just trust yourself. We have like an inner guidance system, and we can follow that, and it'll direct us to what's best for us in our specific life. Everybody is different.
Right. Okay. So before I let you go, most of us had to go through life before we finally had the realization that we needed change to make change,
Mm.
like we are now. Do you, since you do have kids, do you teach your kids that now, or do you let them go through life the way you went through it and then kind of figure it out?
Well, what I do now, I mean, it's not the same as what I was doing 5 years ago or 10 years ago, because I'm growing and learning. So
Yeah.
I was maybe doing things not in the best way always. I
hmm
try to do now, and I'm not great at it, is number one, not to give constant advice. It's
mm
very hard not to do that, because that sends the message that they don't know what the hell they're doing. I always have to tell you what to do. And that's not the trust thing that you want to build in them, right? So it's better to ask about what they feel and what they think and what do you think you should do and all that. And also give space to have feelings. I would do that differently if I were to do it again, learning to really, really validate feelings. Like, I would ask anyone to watch 20 YouTubes on validating feelings of children. I think that's absolutely critical for their well being. And also not to panic if they don't achieve this and that. Like, people have different paths in the world. Who's to say, how are we
That's
doing
true.
this point system? What if they're nice to their neighbors and they just kind of live a normal life? What's wrong with that? Or, you know,
True.
what? So to let, children kind of guide themselves into how they are to live in this world, and without criticizing or ranking them by degrees. I think that's a big mistake.
That's so true. Okay. So as we have come to the end. Of course, I told you I appreciate you, and I promise you I really do. I've given myself some homework, including going to check out your book, check out the website,
Oh,
join
thank
that
you,
courage
Donna. That's
circle.
adorable.
I have some videos I need to watch on YouTube, and I am gonna figure out this weird stuff that's going on right now. Um, but like I said again, I appreciate you, and I know that somebody that is listening that has touched their lives as well. I always try my best to be vulnerable, and I got to tell the truth. I'm a horrible liar because I will forget, so I just tell the truth, and this is my
I
truth.
love that. I love
This
that.
is
And
my
I think
truth.
your
So
openness is very clear and such a beautiful example of, how we learn is just simply to do that, to be honest and open.
yes,
Yeah.
great. I appreciate it. So again, thank you all for staying with us all the way to the end. I hope you got something from it. I hope you can take something from this as well. And if the Lord says the same, I will see you all next week. Bye bye.
Bye, Donna.